Okay, so now I'm live. Um, I thought I would try this format in order to stop overthinking doing um, other types of things like a podcast to try to get things out. So um, I just decided I would join in and maybe take the chance also, like as a special event after reaching like 1,000 subscribers to talk about the last year where I started working as a full time artist almost in unexpected ways. Um, I began last year, I decided to start taking active lessons, and it began sort of as a challenge to myself. And I think from a writer's perspective, um, the idea can be challenging. Writers tend to be more introverted. So I wanted to challenge myself to develop those presentation skills that I think are necessary right now to um, push your work out there and get more people to notice you. And before I knew it, I was already doing castings for theater plays after 3 weeks. And before I knew it, I was running like an underground theater in Mexico City. And in the last 6 months, we presented about 4 plays and also like a Balinese dance show. So it was a pretty wild year, and there were a lot of lessons I think that I learned about starting to do like what you could call professional artist work, right? In terms of actually getting people to pay to go see your play and all the aspects that go alongside it. And it really changed the way I started to think about doing work as a writer, because I think for a lot of writers, uh, their type of personality tends to be more introverted, to live more in fantasy, and to be successful as a writer economically means that they can escape the drudgery of everyday working life. And what I discovered was that that was kind of like an illusion and a sort of uh, hurtful fantasy, right? To think that working as a writer is going to be like this utopic escape from modern life. So yeah, I realized that there's gonna be things you like, things you don't like, and but you know, it's always interesting when you decide to take those steps, right? For example, I really did not like sales, right? I thought that was almost like the opposite of what I wanted to do in life. And when I had to start doing sales to get people to go to the place, um, I struggled a lot, right? You just had to have the confidence to really push and what you're doing as valuable, right? Like as something that people who are actually working those jobs that we think are terrible, to give you the hard earned money. That was something I struggled with, and I had to, like go and learn about sales and change my mentality about it and have the confidence to actually push what I was doing as something valuable. So so after doing that for about a year, I started realizing that I had to take those lessons I learned by doing theater and working in theater professionally into writing. And so part of it was this aspect of marketing. So I started the year deciding I was going to go into doing a lot of things that were focused on publishing something physically. So I started with designs, and I think that's a really great avenue to kind of like dip your feet in. And not only that, I think in general, uh, people really appreciate having something, like a presentation card, like the Minisign works almost like that. Instead of, like asking over, a chat for somebody to read your stuff, which seems kind of like intrusive. When you give like a present, like a physical nice thing to people, it becomes something much more effective. And even for people who do not necessarily are into literature, just like they appreciate the gesture instead of when you ask people to read something you wrote, it almost feels like a demand, right? Like so, changing that mentality of almost like giving a present to somebody, like really changes the dynamic of the interaction. And so that was one aspect. The other one was starting to do public um, literature themed events. So last Friday, I made the first like open mic for specifically for poetry, but also for other types of artists. So I was confident that that was something that was going to be good, but like the events really surprised me how effective it was and how excited people were, um how thankful for the space and for that event. So like I was, like at the event I said that, like I thought like a good estimate would be like doing like the event once every month. And like when the event was over, like people came up to me and said like, Benno, we think like 1 month is too much time. We need you to make it at least every 15 days. So that felt really special to like, I really had the sensation that I tapped into something that people really need and that is going to be really impactful in their lives. And also personally, even though I've been doing theater for a while now, and I learned a lot of techniques as an actor, I realized how much potential there is to incorporate that in a live reading of poetry. So for me, that was also the first time I read some of my poems like in a stage. And afterwards, I just couldn't stop thinking about uh, how to incorporate the techniques like an actor develops into poetry to create a really impactful show of poetry. And I think it really has a lot of potential. I think it's something that it's really worthwhile exploring for poets. So, like right now, I think poetry is doing really well in Substack, and I think it's really valuable for poets to start considering the different mediums that poetry is associated with. So, um, even though we talk about arts with sort of like very definite identities, like poetry is something that has always been in a liminal contact with other forms of expression. So, especially music, theater, and the graphical arts. A little bit later, maybe if you're thinking in a timeline, right? But like music and theater were like almost Siamese brothers, right? Like even theater didn't divorce itself from poetry until very recently, right? Like if you think about the Greek theater, we think about Elizabethan theater and Shakespeare and like the Spanish Golden Era, right? Like all of these things were still written in poetry. And it wasn't until much later that it kind of got separated. So um and if we think about like the poet as a job, so all the different manifestations of the poet throughout time, like the bard, the juggler, and things like that, they were all people who trained in scenic arts, right? Like whether it was music, um, even acrobatics, like the juggler, the Mestre de Juglaria, which is like the title in Spanish. And So these are all things that poets used to train in, and and we have become so limited to the narrow point of view of like the modern poet that just writes in a corner in the dark by candlelight or something like that, and then gets read, like by an equally lonely person on their home, so that they forget like so much of the techniques and the potential that there is in just incorporating all of those other different elements into your work. And so like right now I'm especially focusing like on these more scenic, like the on the aspects, so things that are related to music and the theater, but like also the graphical element, which I try to do in most of my work, but there's calligraphy, right? There's things that can really enhance um, how your poetry is conveyed to to the reader in that case, that can enhance the impact it has, right? So understand the medium and not have like this kind of disembodied idea of the poem that is just kind of like the abstract written form, right? Like there's so much potential in exploring painting. Like for example, in haiku, there was like a mixed media form where they would like paint and then use calligraphy to write the haiku down. And so to create this kind of like composite work. So these are some of the things that I think um, a poet can really take advantage of uh, to develop their craft, right? Like of course there's like the basics of understanding all of the little things like the meter, the rhyme, and for the lyrical stand like point of view, and the metaphors, signals, like synecdoches, all of these resources it has from the basic linguistical point. But you really have to like it will really make you grow if you discover all the other potential that there is in incorporating things from this sibling well, yeah, the sibling arts, like music and theater. So so yeah, going back then, I think I want to make an emphasis on this because like if you stay on the point of view of doing poetry as something for yourself, you're gonna be limiting yourself. And by starting doing things live, you really discover a lot of potential that can improve your writing, not just your your shows and your presentations, but actually like the potential to create different things and access different parts of the imagination, right? So so that's one of the advices I want to give, like explore the other arts that can like show you the possibilities that poetry has that doesn't limit to like the straightforward um poem. And okay, so the other aspect again, I'll go back to what I was mentioning at the beginning, right? Like about the almost like the fantasy that I used to have of what working as an artist was going to be, that it would kind of solve my problem with having to do things I didn't want to. And I think this idea is really toxic, not just for artists, but I think people in general, for our generation, especially from the millennials, right? Like we were taught, that work, you should choose something that you really like doing, and so that it becomes pleasurable, right? So we come into a world dominated by a kind of ruthless work ethic, right? And the way to make that okay if is to find something that you really enjoy, so that work then becomes pleasurable. And this kind of ties into the kind of liberal philosophy of the hedonistic life, right? So life is about having pleasure, and the way you can sort of navigate the the awful work culture that we have today is if you find something that you really like and that it's kind of pleasurable. And I think this ideology is really toxic. It's especially for men, right? Because I don't think that's a good motivation to, and especially for me writing, like to think about writing as something that is going to be pleasurable, or that I'm going to do just to be happy or contented. Like the alternative that I want to present, and that was like the change of mind that I had, that it started working for me, and was it's not it's not to do what you it's not, follow your passion or follow your dreams. Is what is so important in your life that you're willing to sacrifice yourself for it, right? It's not a question about pleasure, but about sacrifice. So if you were to die tomorrow, what was that thing that you were willing to put the effort, the sacrifice, the drudgery to get it done? Because like writing's not gonna be an escape for drudgery, and like working as an artist is not gonna, be just doing what you like all the time. There's gonna be times where you gotta force yourself to go into things you didn't want to. Like if you're really lucky, maybe you get like a good editor. But if in your work you're not finding challenges to go into places that you didn't want to, or that you were afraid of, it's probably not going to be very impactful, right? So having this change of mind into thinking about your mission in life as something that you're willing to sacrifice yourself for, and that all that drudgery and effort is going to be worthwhile, even if you do not get like recognition or pleasure, or happiness. I think that's when you have found your calling, right? That's when like you're going to be capable of putting the work, putting the dedication to this. Okay, so that was basically it. I'm gonna now read the chat. As I mentioned at the beginning, I was thinking about doing the live more, uh, to force myself and to not overthink sharing these kind of things, like in a podcast format. But if any of you got like questions, I'm gonna start reading the chat. So we got Brother Rob. Nice to have you in here. Culturally, artistic practice has been conflated with or confined to artistic occupation, which stinks. Conflated with or confined. Yeah, I think like this notion of art for art's sake is really modern and very strange, right? Like poets had like an artist in general had like a very definite pragmatical objective in their communities, right? So if you were like a painter in medieval times, you were doing like a very important social job, right? Like in painting the churches and doing the icons, you were creating like portals to the divine, right? And because the divine was like in the hierarchy of things, um, very important. It wasn't just like, oh, I do art because of art's sake and just to express myself. It was like a very objective, um, like societal role that they were serving. And so did poets in many different traditions, right? Like they were either prophets, or had like a very definite job, like a craft in their communities. And they were like, like maybe in Homer time, like learning and memorizing the Iliad and doing this work at these gatherings to uphold the myth. That was like something that was like very important, like as important as, like, you know, um, being a lawyer, or being a software developer nowadays, like it was something very pragmatical, and it wasn't just like this hedonistic pursuit of creativity that we have in self expression. It was like something that had a very definite social impact in upholding the community, their myths, and their values. So yeah, transcending that notion of the artist as just like this kind of like self obsessed hedonistic person, I think is very important. Okay. Okay. Sometimes you gotta force yourself to spam the like button. Thank you, Rob. And a lot of performance arts like singing and dancing was quite normal in the past. Many were expected to participate in song and dancing communal spaces. Yes, and again, this is like the social aspect, which is very important. One of the things I really like about Balinese dance, which is something I also got into last year, is that it's one of those rigorously kept traditions that that is still that they still keep in Bali, and they still keep as the glue that keeps the society together. So everybody there participates in the performances. Like everybody either learns to play the gamelan, which is sort of like their orchestra instrument, which is really, and even from there you get that their idea of community, because the gamelan is composed of several instruments, several flutes and percussions, but like in their culture, it's just one instrument, right? It's as if we call the orchestra an instrument, right? So they're always playing together, and they always have this idea that it's like a unity of several performers playing one instrument, even though they play different instruments from our perspective. And so you can have like a fantastic dancer who is really impactful and then goes to work in the rice paddies, right? Like everybody participates in art, whether doing the beautiful dresses that they use, or doing the dancing or the music. And 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 I had the opportunity of working with somebody called Nicolas Nunez in Mexico City, whose work is with he started working in theater, but then went to Tibet, met the Dalai Lama, explored a lot of the ritual dances that they have. He went to Mexico and studied like the ritual local dance practices, and tried to make like a secular ritual or rite that people in the cities could participate in. And one of the things I learned and discovered doing these things is without rituals, you cannot have like any sort of community. The rituals are the essential aspect through which a community finds cohesion. And if we are so segmented today, it's because we do not have rituals that create communities, and we do not have like the myths or the shared values that allow people to cooperate. So that was also like a very important lesson I had this year. Um, okay, so we got Joseph Roman. What's up? What's up, Joseph? OG Cinema Club member. Hello, Benno. I was wondering, where do you think raw psychological poetry stands today in the likes of Poet or Beckett? Mm, raw psychological poetry. Well, you know, um, it's hard to say. Like, I think there's a big problem of poetry. Like that evolved sort of into the confessional line of poetry in terms of you this really obsessive exploration of the self that becomes kind of narcissistic in a way. I think you can still, I think the important aspect is to um, learn how to bridge like the things that are of individual importance, and learn the craft enough that you can translate that into something that might be of general interest, right? So I do not think like there's a problem, like with exploring your own psychology, but when it starts to become kind of like obsessive and narcissistic, and I think that's not even healthy, that's kind of like the Sylvia Plath line, where it just if it's not channeled into something that it's kind of healing in a sense, then it becomes kind of like self-pitying. And I think it doesn't even lead towards like something that is healthy for the artist. uh so like that's why a lot of the confessional poets ended up in suicide, at least, that's, I don't really want to get too much into saying why, like I it's not about that, but like I definitely think that it's not really healthy to obsess as like the isolated poet and the isolated individual. I think you should always try to find the avenues that, like connect to the broader culture, and towards maybe that's something that reaches out of yourself, right? So that would be my take. I love that about the well-kept traditions. Do you think there are ways to reinvigorate that communal artistic spirit? Yeah, that's sort of why I think the theater is really important right now, and theater slash, live poetry. I think that's it has a lot of potential right now, especially because of the aftermath of the pandemic and the fragmentation that has happened after that. Like it just like social media was already causing struggles, but after the pandemic, it just ramped everybody into digital life and to the tribalism that it generated. So now you get uh, people whose community is online and only online, and because they are so radicalized, they cannot like talk or have conversations with people outside their tribe. So that's left right politics or whatever you want, so everybody has lost a sense of like a physical community. And worse than that, like with AI and like the amount of time that we spend on screens, that's already also mining the sense of reality itself. So we got people that make AI their romantic partner, their a spiritual guru, their therapist, and that they start losing all sense of reality because of that. So one of the possibilities that theater has and that poetry can also exploit is the transformation of physical space, right? Theater cannot be recorded and digitalized because it loses its main tool, which is like physical space and transformation of the physical space, right? And that's what can help people heal their relationship towards reality. And the same goes with poetry. Like poetry has that, light poetry can also have that same effect, that it can help people to anchor themselves into reality and to rethink their relationship towards it. So uh, those things are really healing themselves, but because it's also like a relationship between people in physical space that also starts generating empathy. That also starts, you know, helping people look at things from from somebody else's point of view, which is what we need right now, right? Like that's how we heal the fractures in our society. And that's why people don't want to go to theater, because they don't want to listen to other people talk, right? They just want to hear, like people from their own clique talk. So this is, of course, like another thing that was really valuable about the event I had, like, like people really expressing themselves, so that you really get like a really close connection to them by the end of the event, and then you have like a real connection, and everybody felt like so excited and so interested in each other. When was the last time you met somebody and we're interested to learn about somebody else's point of view? So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, and that's specifically, what makes things like theater and poetry important right now. All right, so we got Danny Maldonado, also like a great member of Cinema Club. Public performance definitely makes me nervous. Maybe I should suck it up. It's a wonderful, like even just like a therapeutic sort of activity. I think it's wonderful, and it will definitely ramp up like nothing else your work. Whether it's um, for poetry or even just like narration. Like we also had people read like short stories in the event. Like one of the really cool things about acting and doing things live is that you can feel how your text or your performance is affecting people's consciousness and attention. And that can give you an idea about what parts of what you're doing is actually impactful, engaging, and what is not. So I think even if your focus is gonna be like written form and do a book, just like doing these sort of things and knowing how to engage people's attention, that's gonna be way better than anything else. Okay, we got Brother Rob again. You got it, Danny. Start with one poem when you present. You only have to be brave for a minute. Um, yeah, it's yeah, and I think like this aspect of bravery also gives you like the confidence that you need to actually feel, like to know what it takes for people to pay for your stuff, right? You have to be brave to go up to somebody and say, "You give me money for my poetry," right? Like, you have to be really self confident about the work you're doing, and doing live presentations is gonna give you that confidence to have the self security to go to the stage and show what you got, right? Like, that's gonna really make you develop that confidence that is necessary to, like eventually work yourself up to, like getting people to pay for your sub. It's like if you were like a plumber and you were insecure about your job, right? Like, nobody's gonna hire you, like, you need that self confidence, and you need to know how effective you're being, um, Hey, awesome. Brother Rob does stand up. That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, and stand up, like that's even more how should I say it? Like you have to do more like work the audience a lot more, and you get a lot of more feedback, right? And because you're looking for more concrete results, right? Like, which is laughter, right? So that's that's even more like what's the word? Specific. And yeah, all of these things help tremendously. So yeah, it's just you know, some of the advices that go beyond the written page that can really transform the way you see writing, like to see possibilities that before um were hidden, and can actually develop your craft way more than just working like at the keyboard for days, right? Like, just even if you do it just one time, like doing it will, like open your imagination to so many possibilities that you don't really have to like become specialized in doing like live readings or presentations or something really or you know crafty. It'll just open yourself to the possibilities that it has, and that will be enough to change your perspective about it when you're down to the keyword work again. um so so yeah, this like I would encourage everybody to choose one of these avenues to explore them. And I've seen like a lot of people starting to get into the more into the physical aspect. Brother Rob had a great sign coming up. Um, so so yeah, explore things beyond the keyboard. Is what I'm trying to say. Like the in the past, poets were so important because they were not these isolated uh, individuals. They were central members of their community, and so were like all other types of artists, right? Like they had really important roles in society, and rediscovering the social role of society beyond like the narcissistic, uh, egotistical, self-obsessed, like image of the artists that we have from like rock stars and rappers and all these kind of celebrities that have poisoned the idea of what an artist is. We have to transcend that into something that is socially involved and that actually brings something to of value to people, beyond entertainment, which is what we're trying to do. Like entertainment's fine, but we need art right now. We need to transform people's life. We need to show avenues of healing and how to reconstruct our societies and communities and give a different direction towards like crazy suicidal direction that we're on right now, right? Like nothing against entertainment, but like we need something more than that, and that's going to require a social perspective of art and the possibilities that it has to connect people, to transform somebody else's way of viewing life, to connect them to the transcendental aspects of life, and to show the possibilities that they themselves had to do that, in their communities, right? So yeah, there's tons of potential, and it's just a question of transcending the illusions we grow up with. Like I talked about the illusion of that working as an artist is gonna solve your problems, and it's gonna be easy work, and it's just gonna be pleasurable, and it's gonna be like nonstop fun. That's an illusion. You should not That shouldn't even be something you aspire towards, right? Like, because that means you're not going to be growing as an individual, and your art's not going to reach any sort of height. Then we got the illusion of the isolated artist, right? That you can just not deal with the problems of going out there and standing up for what you believe and your artwork. And once you transcend those visions, and you're willing to take it as a calling, that you're willing to sacrifice and do effort to achieve, and it's and that will and it's not that it has to be like this self-flagellating thing. Like, of course, there's pleasure and a lot of rewards out of doing it, but you gotta think more about what you're willing to sacrifice and not about what you want to get out of it. If you're thinking about getting money and fame and like a comfortable life, you're not gonna get anywhere. right? And it's not gonna help you grow as a person or help others grow as persons either, right? So these are the things that I wanted to talk about, like that, some of my lessons about, like, you know, almost working as a full-time artist now. Not that I'm necessarily being successful, but that's what I mean. It's um, if you're worried about being like a starving artist, learn to fast. You know, learn to take cold showers. You can be so much stronger. You know, Y- and once you decide to go down that path, like opportunities start opening like crazy. Like everything I did last year seemed impossible to me. Like when I started acting, like being on stage and doing like a theater play and stuff like that seemed impossible to me. And like a year later, I had already done like 3 plays. I also did like a Balinese dance presentation, and the way I got there was just by, deciding that I was gonna put the sacrifice no matter what, and that I was gonna, even if it seemed impossible, I was gonna do it. And that kind of like stubbornness that it had like a risk of being like catastrophic, ended up being something that benefited artists I worked with, the audience I presented to, and especially me. Like, I mean, it was transformational. So, yeah, don't put limits to yourself, and if you decide that you're willing to do what it takes, um, and to have faith on that path, like the universe conspires to get that done in ways that seem almost impossible. And opportunities that you thought were so far away start coming up just when you need them. And yeah, it just starts opening up, but you got to take that risk. Without it, if you do not take that risk, um, there's nothing that's gonna be of value out of your work. You gotta take the risk, and that's what people are gonna see on the stage: the effort, the the sacrifice you made. Those are things that people can see and value, and that's when you can actually do a meaningful performance, and also see like the impact that your work has on other people, like face to face. Even though like I've had like a lot of support and great comments, when you are doing it face to face to somebody, and you can see like a big smile, and you can definitely feel like that he's like zoned in into what you're saying and like concentrated, and their attention is absolutely on what you're saying. You can almost feel the transformation happening in your brain, and having that in your work is gonna make you grow like nothing else. Okay, so gonna catch up on the comments again. Okay, we got Brother Rob in full agreement. I'd add only one thing which has been on my mind, and that's that we have to also inspire participation. Creating work for people to enjoy and gather around is good, but animating a community to generate and share their own art is powerful. Yeah, I would say that it's it's almost like you cannot even help that happening. Like if you get people together and they're having a good time and they're engaged with what you're doing, a lot of people are gonna be inspired, and that's also one of the really cool things about live, live presentations, when you see like people inspired with thoughts rushing in their head, and they can't wait to get back to write in their houses. And like, yeah, absolutely, like I don't think like yeah like inspiration will happen no matter what. We got Joseph Roman. What is your favorite play? that may have been turned into a film, and what is an underrated or underappreciated play that people do not read plays like myself should read and meditate with. Well, that's interesting because, like, even if you have like a bad play, you can maybe go do like a good show, right? So in terms of that's what's kind of interesting about plays. There's things that might not be great on paper, but you could do something really great on stage with them. So let me see if I gotta shout out a play right now. Mm, let me give you a thought. I'm gonna go back to some of the comments, and I'll see if I can share some thoughts on that. Really love The Flies by Jean-Paul Sartre. Yeah, I would recommend people reading like Doors Closed, Huis Clos, in French. That's a really cool. Like I actually have like an essay that I'll probably post soon. It's a play about the afterlife, and three people are put in a room, and they have like their sofas, and it's two women and one man, and that's it. That's the afterlife, and throughout it, they're kind of struggling to figure out if they're in heaven or hell, and they realize that they were, like put with people that it was gonna be like intolerable to live with, right? So there's a very famous phrase from that, which is like very interesting, which means hell is the other, right? Like hell is other people. L'enfer, c'est les autres in French, right? So I think that plays really wonderful because it's almost as if it was about smartphones, right? Like we built this little hell. Like social media is almost designed to put people that are gonna piss you off, and show you stupid things that are gonna like keep you engaged and like enraged all the time. So, so it's a play that definitely has a lot of things that are worthwhile thinking about, especially in connection to what we built. So yeah, shout out to Jean-Paul Sartre. Um, and he'll yeah enjoy yeah no exit. Yeah, I wasn't sure what was the English translation. Yeah, there's pretty good performance of it on YouTube as well. I haven't seen that one, but I'll check it out. um like obviously Tennessee Williams is fantastic. Like one of my favorite films is um was sorry, I like the Tramway Cold Desire. Is it Tramway? Let me check. Tramway Cold Desire. I think it's not a tramway. Like, or is it? Well, anyways, yeah, with like Marlon Brando, one of my favorite films, and Tennessee Williams is fantastic, fantastic. Um, great. A Streetcar Named Desire. Yeah, yeah. In Spanish, it's translated as tranvía, so which is like tramway. So yeah, The Streetcar Named Desire. That uh, fantastic film, and Tennessee Williams is really great. Almost every film that's been made on one of his like his screen, well, like his plays is great. Um, a Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. That's also a really good film. So so yeah, and also, like as a writing possibility, I think like I would encourage people to think about theater plays because that's also a really cool exercise to think about something that is actually gonna become reality, right? I think people have, it used to be like a lot of people would dip their feet into writing for the theater, and that's become like rare these days. Like people, it's only like theater people who write theater anymore, and I think it's as a writer, I think people should be like thrilled about the opportunity, to see their work, performed live and becoming reality, in a way that is almost more meaningful than cinema, and maybe more um realistic. Like cinema is still in like a point where it needs a lot of money to get done, which is not true, but like uh but theater can be way easier to get into and produce. So, you know, also something that I would promote. Sadly, most of what I write for the theater is in Spanish. I have this really interesting like separation between what I write in English and Spanish, right? Like so, some things are almost, like I really like writing poetry in English. I think I like to write fiction more in Spanish. I've also written most of my theater work in Spanish, essays mostly in English. So I find that separation interesting, just like based on like the particularities of each language. Um, but yeah, hopefully I'll be able to start mixing more of my local Spanish work with my online English work soon. Like one of the reasons I also, like focus so heavily in English was because I didn't find anybody or any community interesting in Spanish online. And on the other hand, like locally, that's where, I made most of my working acquaintances. So I have like a really interesting division right now in between like my online English persona and my which is almost non-existent in Spanish, and like the parallel life I live in, like the local theater work. So almost everything gets channeled into live performance. So yeah, I'll it's kind of frustrating to work in two languages. I really love to explore uh, different uh, languages. I think that's also something that really helps poetry learning. Because on the other hand, I hate reading like translation. So learning another language, learning the poetical resources that they have, because not all languages are translatable, right? Like Latin has, because of their grammar, resources that are not available in other languages, right? So that happens also with, like, for example, Japanese. Like it also has like a very special sort of grammar, and like it also has special resources for calligraphy and the graphical elements. So learning about the different resources about other languages in terms of poetry can really help you, also inspire you to what you can do with your own language. So another advice I would give, learn other languages, learn how they sound, what phonetical music they use, is, all things that really help. Um, okay, so what else? Anybody got more questions? I think I've already exhausted what I wanted to talk about in this first live stream. I'm really happy to see so many familiar faces. We also got Adrian joining up. We were just talking about Friday. Adrian joined. How many languages do I speak? Well, the interesting thing is that because I've learned them to kind of indulge in poetry, like for example, I learned very, how to pronounce them, and but not necessarily how to speak with them. Like for example, I can read Italian. I can speak Italian, but I've never had like a conversation in Italian because it's basically just for kind of like literary purposes. But I've studied around 9 languages, I would say. So basically, most of the Romance languages, like Portuguese, Spanish, French, Italian, Latin. I've studied a little bit of Greek also. I want to learn more Greek, especially Latin and Greek, I think are very important for poetry because they give you so much history about the words, like I also have like this phrase, like like in prose you work with sentences, and in poetry you work with words. So learning the etymologies, the Latin etymologies, the Old English or Old Norse etymologies, the Latin and the Greek, like all of that is gonna help you understand what those words actually, their history and their deeper meanings, right? So great resources also, like especially because you can create new words, like if you have like Greek and Latin, you can create new words, you know um so yeah, um all things that are worth exploring for sure. um and yeah, well, Adrian joined on Friday, so it's really cool to have him on. Like we were talking about like the live um poetry events, and how it can change your perspective about what you can accomplish with poetry, right? Versus the written word. And which is, of course, we get like the lyrical element, but you can take it way you can go way farther than that, like and involve more the physical movement, like to enhance your reading. And so it can become very theatrical, and that will open possibilities. You can write poems that are specifically, meant to be performed on stage, right? Like and that's how I think about it. Like before that reading, I was seeing what I had in Spanish that was well suited for to be more meaningful, like in a stage, right? And because the stage gives you other possibilities that like a screen or paper does not give you, right? You can really exploit the lyrical aspect, the dramatical aspects. You know, um, there's tons of stuff that you can make, and you can accomplish almost little magical tricks, which is something that really interests me. Um, so yeah. Um, any more questions? Okay. Well, unless we got any more, I think that's it. It's been a pleasure. Um, really enjoyed having this live stream. Top 5 movies of all time. Well, right answers only. Well, I already mentioned Streetcar Named Desire. I think that's one. I would say The Shining is also one of the best movies of all time. And like I don't necessarily like The Shining or enjoy it that much in terms of like personal taste, but like that's I also think is just a masterful film. Um I would put Apocalypse Now in the list. Apocalypse yeah, it's just like an amazing film. Um Let me think. Um I would say, mm, I'll put The Birds on the list. Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds. And I really like it, especially because of the what people would classify as crappy um, special effects. I don't think it's that. Like, I think it's very important to realize and to move away from the realistic language of cinema, right? And I'll like the other one. I'll give it to animation and to a modern animator. And like, I really want to shout out Umami. Is he has a series called Interface on YouTube, and it's absolutely masterful. It's one of the best works of animation, and overall, I think it's just a master. Coraline is also amazing. But I want to give a shout out to Interface. If you do not know Umami's work, I definitely recommend it to everybody. Um, has such a unique language, so surrealistic, and so poetic. It's just it's it's yeah, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And I'll give like I'll post it in the chat. It's umami, like the word in Japanese for like the savory taste. Um, and the work is called Interface, and it's about this kind of like he takes a work like a painting, the painting of Magritte, of the man covered with like an apple in front of the face. And yeah, he there's like a pink demon worm clown thing that it's just uh it's wonderful. I really recommend it. And I'll give like a last shout out to Donnie Darko, which is also one of my personal favorites. Okay, with that, we make it to 1 hour live stream. I think I'll leave it there. I'll hope to make more live streams soon. I think like it's a format that allows me to not overthink and just come here and talk about stuff I want to talk without. Charlie Kaufman is also great. I really enjoyed a lot of his work. Um, Yeah, all of it. His work as a screenwriter is great. I really want to read his novel. Right, he's gotten into straightforward literature. I think. So so yeah, great. He's great. His work as a director has been good. Um, I might do some Charlie Kaufman special, maybe in the cinema club, or do like a live stream because yeah, he's really great work. Um, I'm not sure about. I've been thinking about ending things. I'm not sure I like that one too much. I might have to give it another chance. A lot of people really liked it. I think it was yeah, and I think it's yeah, something about ants. I'm not sure if Antkind or Ant Hill, but it's something about ants, like his novel. I'm really curious about that one. But yeah, um, adaptation is great. Um, Being John Malkovich is a riot. It's fantastic. Um, yeah, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is really good. I think you wrote that one too. But yeah, uh, one of the best screenwriters out there. I really like Charlie Kaufman. Um, all right, well, um, yeah, yeah. I think my problem with thinking of ending things is that it's kind of gimmicky. You know, it relies too much on the gimmick. So, um, and I don't find it too interesting because of that. Um, And that's something that happens to me too with like Vladimir Nabokov. You know, like I think he's a fantastic writer, but like because he's so focused on like the gimmick, like I just lose interest too soon. You know, I I never finish any of his books because like I think I get the gimmick too soon. Like I don't think it's worth finishing after that. So, anyways, I'll see you guys soon. If you also want to hear me rant about any topic, I'll consider it for like a new live stream. And it's been great talking with you guys. And I'll hope to do more of this soon. So best of wishes and keep on with the good work.